Okay, so today I'm going to work on implementing background tiles because so far my paradise looks like this. And if you want to place your little house, I mean, it looks pretty ugly, but at least it's, borderline functional. So for the background tiles, I think the first thing, so it's going to be if you like shift click, then it goes into the background and doesn't block your person, your character, and it's also like a larger size. It should be sort of filling the entire space, maybe. So the first thing I'm going to do is fire paint again, paint.net, and um, so I think there should be a different background. Maybe I shouldn't worry about this just yet, but eventually there should be a different background for each. If there's a wall tile in front, and like for this tile, you'd want the entire tile to be filled with wall. But on the other hand, if you have the T shape, then it'd be sort of weird to have wall over on this side. You'd only really want it here and here. But to be on the safe side, I would probably fill the entire space except for this left quarter column. But for now, I'm just going to basically implement the version for this one and use it everywhere. So we're going to call this BG. I'm going to use like this same color, but like half as bright. So this is hue, saturation, and value. Whatever, brightness. So if I change this to 25, then that will make for an even brighter background, even darker background. Ta-da, well done. Okay. So then the next thing is to bring it into the game. There it is right there. And that's done. Just have to remember what it's called. Wooden Wall X BG. Okay, so now let's see. I haven't figured out the right way to handle all these wooden wall copies just yet. I think I think I need to do a pretty decently large re-architecture of the object system, because I mentioned before that I really don't want to have all this stuff codified in as handwritten Java classes or Kotlin classes. It should just be, there should be a text file somewhere that says like, wooden wall, and it basically has these same properties. And then there'd be maybe like you could have something like these things that are subtypes, or you could even just say like you could have the various shapes here, because for one, there's going to be other types of walls. There'll be lots of other types of walls, stone and whatever other sort of materials there's going to be, and they should sort of join with each other, but not necessarily join with the ground, because the ground is also going to have subtypes. There's going to be like the grass on top versus the inner versus the corners, and right now those are all sort of distinct entities. Even though there's only dirt here, that's because I sort of fake it when I use in the game world builder. I sort of swap it out. In any case, I'm not going to do that right now, but gonna have wooden wall background. I also don't want to generalize too soon. Like, it's not really a problem until I have 2 or 3 walls, and then I have like 15 classes for these walls and corners and things. And then at that point, I'll know for sure what I need to do. Hopefully. Before I forget, I also need to call register terrain type. It's not. I mean, it's still terrain. It's just it can overlap with other sort of foreground terrain, and it doesn't. Yeah. That'll be interesting. Like right now, there is no sort of global. There's no grid that I can just sort of look up into to find the terrain. I'm using the physics system, and if you can walk in front of this thing, I think I still should have. I think it still needs to be in the physics engine. Come to think of it, but it doesn't need to, like, it'll be a sensor or something. It doesn't actually need to block the player. I mean, sensor isn't. It's not a sensor. It's just nothing collides with it. That's probably the better way of modeling it. Oh, whoops. Okay, so now that's basically everywhere. Before I forget, there's this category scenery thing here. And so the player, so there's right now there's 3 types of objects. There's scenery, creature, and player objects. And players collide with the scenery and the creature. So what we need to do is add a new type here. I'm just going to call BG for now. For background. Actually, that might break things. I know the physics shape that I have defined for the wooden club that I used physics editor for. I had to write these values in there by hand, so I think it's probably better to just add this on the end. And maybe I can change it later. There's only one shape to update anyway. Okay, so now there's a new scenery type, and nothing collides with it, which is actually fine. Like, the player doesn't collide with it, and the lighting doesn't collide with it. I might change that with the lighting later, but we'll see. We'll just leave it like that. Okay, so now we want to go to player controller system. And this is the place where we handle, if you left click on the background, then it places the terrain there. So the other thing we need to do is get block at point. We need to differentiate between foreground and background somehow. So here, I think terrain component, how many places is this used? Not too many places. I'm going to say val background equals false. And then that way, we can differentiate between foreground and background. And by default, it'll be foreground, because that's what I've been using so far. So if we have an entity, and the entity has terrain component, and entity get terrain component is not the background. actually, there's a better way to do this. Use defaults again. Background boolean equals false. And so we just want to make sure here that it matches the type that we're looking for. So we want to return true here in this clause if we're looking for background and it is a background, or we're not looking for background and it's not a background. And we can just sort of copy that parameter over here. Okay. That looks about right. Okay, so we're going to do something similar here. I'm a strong proponent of copy-paste, so long as you remember to go and refactor it later if you need to. But I think it's a natural evolution of code. Well, okay, actually. All this can go away. I'm going to pull this method. That's a lot of parameters. I'm going to call it try place block. Okay. So we're not inside the click handler here anymore. We don't know whether shift was being held down, and that's how we're going to differentiate between foreground and background. So I'm going to say private var boolean alternate action, because shift is pretty vague. It could be used for other things too. I'm going to say it defaults to false, and down here, well, I already have sprinting, whatever. It can be used for multiple things. Okay, so this sets alternate action to true when shift is pressed and unsets it when it's released. Okay, so now here I can say if not alternate action, even though it's sort of weird to have if not and then an else, I usually try to put the more common one first. And so most of the time alternate action is not going to be set. So, yeah. So I'm not going to worry about neighbors. I don't know if it makes sense to even worry about neighbors at all, actually. So I'm going to say try place block in background. Background equals true. And create block. This is where things get a little bit more interesting. So I think the only thing that actually changes here is this bit. If background, not background, do that, else we want the scenery background. And of course we want to have a different block type as well, but this system doesn't really know about that just yet. There's also, like, nothing collides with it, so it doesn't actually need friction, but that's not gonna hurt anything. So if the block is wooden wall, then Well, we don't actually want to place... Okay, first of all, let's see what this looks like. Yeah, I'm not calling that anywhere. Try place block. Background. Okay. Let's see what this looks like. What am I checking for? I'm checking for shift. So this is normal. Other than not working, it doesn't seem to have done anything. Oh, it's talking about getting... Yeah, okay, so I need to get rid of this thing. Because that's assuming foreground. Oh. Also, for block name, like block name is wooden wall, and this is terribly fragile, but I'm gonna add just this for now, just so it looks right. This is the sort of thing that I want to have, like, I don't know if it needs to be like a naming convention, that seems maybe not great, but it needs to be something that scales better across various wall types. Hold down shift. That's not quite what I was expecting. This is probably something dumb I did. Well, that's there, so it's in my code somewhere. Block name is that BG thing. And run to this point. Oh, I probably registered it wrong. Oh, duh. Okay, mystery solved. I can't place in front of it. This is... that looks weird. So why can't I do that? Let me clear all my breakpoints. And set a breakpoint here. Oh, okay, I think I know why. So there's the background. Okay, looks good. If I place it on top of it, without shift pressed. So background right now, it's looking for... So right now background is false. And entity is non-null. Let's just check to see what this is. Background is false. Well, that's wrong. So that's probably why this isn't working. Ah, yes. So over here in that place where I'm creating blocks, of course it's an inventory. I should move that out. I also need to say, background equals background. I'm doing named parameters because if it's an optional parameter, it seems, plus booleans in general, just, it's always a bad idea, pretty much, to have just boolean parameters because they don't really mean anything. If this was Java, I'd probably create a background enum and have like an is and an is not sort of value. So that way you could always tell what it is instead of guessing what true false was. Well, that didn't seem to change anything. That's weird. Okay, I'm running again in debug with debugger enabled. Okay, so oh, well, I'm not doing a very good job of this, am I? Okay, so now I'm telling it to. Okay, that should be right. Hey, there we go. Okay, let's create something that vaguely resembles a house for now. Okay, well, get out of the way. Very vaguely. I don't think I can go one more up. It won't be symmetrical. Ah, I need more blocks. Okay, one more time with a smaller enclosed area. I also need to slow down the day cycle. It's really... it's not convenient for testing. This positioning is really off. The physics of the player is really wonky. I need to spend some time on that. Oh, also, it needs to be rendered behind everything else. So if I sometimes it'll be in front and sometimes it won't be. I think it's non-deterministic. And there's actually, transform component actually has a z index. If you look at the rendering system, the way the rendering system works is when it calls process entity. It's sorted. That's right. So of all these different sorts of things, it sorts them by checking the z index of the two things. And basically, I need to update the z index for background stuff. So this gets synced up. Like if you look at the physics synchronization system, it calls transform.position.set. However, this position that comes from the physics body is a 2D vector. And so this extension method that I made, it just copies the x and the y over. So basically that means if you set a z value, it won't get overwritten. So here we can just say well, equals if not background, then whatever we can set to 0, and Otherwise, we can do -10. Yeah, it wants floats for these. I guess I can oblige. Okay, so now it should always always be in the actual background. Okay, that looks pretty good. I mean, I still didn't like it. It's still sort of it's bleeding out the edges. um, but I mean that's basically what I wanted it to do. So I'm gonna keep working on this, but I think it's looking good.